To thank my girl Latoya for that heartfelt intro and your groove in the beginning like set the mood right. So I appreciate that. My mother has been spending all weekend with me, running around and helping me lead this wild life of mine. And so, Mom, my first and most important hero, Reverend Dr. Gwendolyn Packnett, thank you for being here. And my partner in getting in good trouble, I promise good trouble. My partner Reginald Cunningham is here. Thank you for being here. I've been spending this last few weeks actually living between here and Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm a fall 2018 residential fellow at Harvard's Institute of Politics, which is a God thing because I didn't even get into Harvard when I applied in undergrad, but here we are. And I get to teach a course every single week on a subject of my choosing. And the subject that I chose was power. Every single week we talk about intersectional activism, we talk about the future and the present of social change, but all of those fundamentally come down to the question of power. Who has it, who gets to use it, how do we use it, and what does it even mean? And in all of my searching and all of my writing and all of my reading and all of my teaching, I've come to the conclusion that power really means nothing if the... And I say that knowing that I'm standing in a room full of people who once upon a time wouldn't have been allowed in this room. I say that knowing full well that as we stand in the shadow and on the shoulders of people like Shirley Chisholm and so many others, that she was a woman for the people. I say that knowing full well that we came of the people, and if we're not still doing for the people, then what are we doing at all? I often think about those folks who aren't at the brunches, who aren't at Harvard, who aren't in office, who are not well-heeled and don't have the access and the privilege of education and employment and a living wage and the flexibility that we have. And so often the world assumes that Black women of any stripe can't be powerful, but especially those who don't have access. I think about all the people who must have thought Ida B. Wells wasn't very powerful when she was writing her little newsletters. Meanwhile, she was educating the entire world on the epidemic of lynching across the American South and capturing our history for us. I think about all the people at the DNC who probably thought Fannie Lou Hamer didn't really have much power at all because all she knew how to do was pick cotton and till fields, but she sat there and said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and changed the entire world and the political process at the same time. I think about all the people who probably didn't think that as the daughter of immigrants that Shirley Chisholm had any power at all, but here we are celebrating her all these years later. I think about my friend Kayla Reed, who started off as a part-time pharmacy technician, and not only did she lead the way in Ferguson, she led the way to the unseating of the 27-year prosecutorial. Here's what I mean by that. You see, there's a dominant culture that we all imbibe. There's a dominant culture that we're all subject to, and that dominant culture says hoarding power, getting power, holding on to it, and keeping it for as long as you can, that is the way that it should be. And we see the evidence of that in that White House right now. But our culture is not a culture of hoarding power, it's a culture of sharing power. We are a culture of community. We are a culture that brings people into us. We invite folks to our dinner tables, right? We invite folks into our homes when other folks want to shut them out. We invite folks into our houses of worship, and we want to share that power because we know that everyone already actually has everything that they need inside of them to be powerful, and it is our job as a community to help them nurture that and be empowered themselves. And so it is our culture as a Black community to build community and share power. And the good news is that when we all have some power, we can actually build the largest, most powerful love army for good they have ever seen, and that they are powerless to defeat. What I know about that faith of a mustard seed is that a mustard seed, according to Jewish tradition, was actually illegal because it would take over all the crops. So the idea that somebody would be allowed to plant a mustard seed was something that the governments and that the powers that be were actually afraid of because they didn't want it to take over all the land. Yeah. You see where I'm going with this? So the parable about the mustard seed was actually not just about the fact that if you have small faith that God will meet it with his large favor. It's also about the fact that if you have the right kind a revolutionary faith, you can take over everything. And that's the kind of power we need to exhibit. We need to be dangerous. They need to be scared of us. Not just on election day, but every day thereafter. We need to be a revolution that takes over everything, and that's the kind of power I know Black women have. That's the kind of power that we need to show. And so as I think about the words of my sister Shakur, no matter how troublesome it is right now, I want to remind you and charge us to remember that it is still our duty to fight for our freedom. It is still our duty to win. We still must love and protect one another because we have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you.